Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. This is a new game published by Renegade Games. It is a cooperative game with clearly a Power Rangers theme. Now, I don't know much about the franchise. I read some of the comics, I watched some of the TV shows. Nothing against it, somehow it never really grabbed me. My daughter Louisa, however, is getting into that, so there may be a time where she will play this game. Actually, I think most likely she will want to play it. As of now, I think the game is just a little too long, a little too advanced for her. She's 7. Maybe when she's, I don't know, 10 or so. So a cooperative game in which the players take on the role of the Power Rangers. They have to fight off hordes of minions that are invading the town until the big villain, Rita, shows up. And at that point, they're trying to defeat Rita. If they defeat the villain, which is represented by this nice miniature here, then they win the game. The game is cooperative, so all players win together. However, if one of the Rangers is defeated and there aren't enough energy tokens to resurrect that Ranger, the players lose the game. They lose the game pretty bad. Also, the town, which is the board, is divided in 5 areas. One is the central area, the headquarters, where we also store some power tokens. The other areas are around that one, and they have a panic value. During the game, there will be hordes of regular Party Patrol soldiers that will appear, and also Super Party Patrol will also show up. When a number of enemies is in an area that matches the panic number, that would be, say, 5 for this area here, then we place the token there. Now to remove that token, we need to clear the area of enemies. And they just keep coming and coming and coming everywhere. You lose the game if all locations are panicked at the same time. So again, you win by defeating Rita, you lose if a Power Ranger is defeated and cannot come back to life, or if all locations are panicked at the same time. Now, as for the Power Rangers, each player will control one, but you may also want actually to have multiple players single players controlling multiple ones. The game doesn't scale really. The same number of monsters will come out whether you play with 2 Rangers on the board or 5 Rangers on the board. I recommend playing with 5 anyways, divide them among players. Each Ranger will have a card indicating a unique power for that Ranger. Each Ranger starts with a power token. During the game, Rangers can only have 1 at a time. If they have 1 and they could acquire another one, too bad for them, they don't get it. Action tokens, they really are the heart of the game in a sense. So when the Rangers are taking their turn, they spend an action, then the Ranger performs an action, then the next player goes, or does he or she, because there is no specific order. The player's turn is over when all the action tokens have been spent, which actually gives you great flexibility. Maybe Kimberly goes twice, then another Ranger does one thing, another Ranger does another thing, etc, etc. Total, complete flexibility. And so just to give you actually a quick sense of what the other Rangers can do, feel free to pause if you want to read the text of the unique powers of the other Rangers. Each Ranger also has, super important, a deck of 10 cards. These 10 cards are used to react to what the monsters do, are used to maneuver, which simply will give you a better position in the fight, and most importantly, they're used to attack. They may also have an energy cost, which can be paid from your own personal supply of 1, but also during combat there will be a supply that is shared and available, and players can borrow or can spend those from there to activate action cards that have a cost. Very important, you will have your hand of cards, and at the beginning of combat you can draw, since these cards are used mainly during combat, you can draw up to 5, but you don't have to. You can draw up to a hand of 5, but you don't have to. And why is this important? Because the cards in your deck are also your life points. If for any reason your deck is depleted, so your cards are between your hand and or discard pile, the Power Ranger is defeated, brought back to the headquarters, and resuscitated if there is a power token available. Otherwise, too bad, the players lose the game. So during the game, you may want to maybe start combo with a smaller hand because several of your cards on the discard pile, not many are left there, and when the enemies attack you, they will force you to discard cards. You will need to discard cards to pay for hits that the enemies inflict you. So this is, well, the general idea. Now, at the beginning of a round, we'll look at the monster deck. And this will be used to deploy minions and monsters. Now, all the minions are here on top, and monsters at the boss are at the bottom. But the game, when you set it up, the cards will be stacked in a way that you have the boss at the bottom, and then each couple of cards you will have a monster, which is also like a mini boss. So you'll have minions, monster, minions, monster, and so on and so forth. But each turn, or I should say each round, during the setup, you will flip face cards face up, generating 5 enemy deployments. You flip a card from the deck, and the way it works, which I think kind of smart, the card will tell you the kind of creature that you get. So here we get 2 super putty patrollers, and the back of the next card tells you where they go. So for example, we're gonna put 2 super putty patrollers in Ernie's juice bar, then we're gonna get 2 putty patrollers in Ernie's juice bar, then we are gonna get 3 putty patrollers in the industrial district, and we continue like this until we flipped 5 cards, and then there will be a horde of new horrible monsters on the board. And then the players can start doing their things. Remember, spending their action tokens in any way they want, or in any order they want. As for the way to spend them, for an action token, a Power Ranger can move anywhere on the board from any location to any other location. For an action, a Power Ranger can recover some of their cards. Actually, I should say, when you move, if you go back to the headquarters, then you get pretty much to reshuffle your deck, put all the discard pile, the entire discard pile in your deck, draw a new hand of cards, get a new power token if you don't have one. So moving there in the center of the board as an extra free action has the advantage that you are healthy again, and you have some cards here that the enemies can kick. Now, the cards have a number of shields here at the bottom. They're used when the card is using defense, but also one of the actions that you can perform by spending an action token is that you can recover up to 6 shields worth of cards from your discard pile, and you shuffle them back into your deck. So it's not as powerful as going to the research center there, to the headquarters, because you only get some cards back, but it can be very useful. The advantage is that, well, if I'm here, I spend an action to get a little bit better, then I can spend my next action to fight, because I'm still there. But if I'm spending an action to go there and an action to come back, well, I spend 2, and so I don't have any left. Another thing that I can do, one of the 3 things I can do by using an action token, is to start a battle. This is very important because it allows you to chain off actions, to coordinate action in a really fun way. Suppose that Red Ninja went there, spending an action token, and Black Power Ranger still has 2 action tokens and spends 1 to also get there, and then we have the Pink Power Ranger that also still has 2 action tokens, spends 1 to get there, and then another one to start a fight. And when a Power Ranger starts a fight, then all Rangers in that area can fight. And that's the neat thing. This is how you can coordinate actions. Because then maybe Black Power Ranger will go somewhere else where somebody else will start another fight, and then that Ranger will be able to fight a second fight. I love that. I love that flexibility. Now, when it's time to fight, when it gets real, only up to 4 minions can be part of combat. If there are more than 4 in an area, you decide which ones you want to attack. And suppose that we have an area, we're having a fight in an area that has 3 regular Putty Patrol and 1 Super Putty Patrol. Now we draw cards from the deck corresponding to the enemy that we're fighting. And so we draw 3 Putty and 1 Super Putty. And we put them in a single line. Now, just for reasons of space, I'm gonna put this one here, but imagine that it's there. Also, some cards may have the fast designation, then they go at the beginning of the line. Some cards may have a guard designation. That means that you cannot attack cards next to them until you defeat them. But the guard cards don't guard themselves. Who guards the guard cards? No one. So actually, just so that you see it more clearly, let's do it like that. So there will be a line of enemy cards. And pretty much in combat, the players will alternate combat rounds. In a combat round, one ranger can perform an action, then the line of cards will perform an action, and you go back and forth until either all cards have been defeated or all players have been defeated and then the game is over, or all cards have acted. Basically, when and if the card line starts with a card with a fast designation, then the enemies go first. What happens is that when it's the enemy's turn during combat, it's super simple. You resolve the leftmost card in the line, doing what it says. In this case, you deal 3 damage, and the players decide who gets it and who gets those, and after that, you turn it like this. And players, when they are fighting, when they are attacking the enemies, they don't attack the miniatures on the board, they attack the cards. And by attacking, they want to place damage markers on the card. When they place damage markers equal to or higher than the health value, then the card is turned face down. Which means that then when we activate it, when you activate the enemy line, starting again from the leftmost non-activated card to activate it, if it's face down, you turn it like this to indicate that it activated, but it doesn't do anything. So it's a good idea if you can attack the cards before they activate, then when they activate you don't get any effect, but sooner or later they'll start giving you negative effects. For combat, it's very simple. When they are dealing damage to you, then you need to choose a Power Ranger who will take that damage, and you will draw cards and look at the shields. And suppose that here, for example, poor Kimberly is taking 3 points of damage. You flip a card. If the result is lower than what you need to pay, what you need to take in terms of damage, this would be 3, then the card is discarded. But you keep a running tally. So Kimberly is supposed to take 3 points of damage, and she paid for 1 by discarding that card. Then we draw another one, and now the total matches what we needed to pay, which is 3, and so we discard that too. If actually what I draw is higher than what I need, say I have already 1, I draw a 3, that brings the total to 4, which is more than what I need. If the card that I draw brings me to more than what I need, then the card is not discarded, that goes at the bottom of the deck. So that's good, because there's a chance that you don't lose a card, you can still use it later. Remember, if your deck is exhausted, it's bad because the Power Ranger is defeated. That's for how the enemies attack our Power Rangers. How about them? Well, when they attack, At the beginning of a battle, the group receives 2 points of power or 2 power tokens that can be spent by the Rangers. The Rangers will spend the power to activate effects, but some don't. And when you activate an effect, you do what it says. It may be that you see these icons here, then you will roll a number of dice. The same number of dice indicated there can be modified by our Rangers abilities, by a variety of factors. And then you simply roll these dice. Each of these symbols is a hit, each of these other symbols is not. For each hit that you score, you place a damage token on a card, you declare in advance the target you're attacking. And that's how it works, back and forth, trying to eliminate those enemies. If you have a monster, one of those mini bosses, the monster has 4 cards, and to defeat the monster you have to defeat all 4. Rita, the final boss, has 6 cards, and you need to defeat all those without losing the game in order, well, to win the game. Important thing, when you defeat a party patrol, you place the miniature on that track there. And what is that? That is where you have the Megazord, well, the Zord cards and the Megazords. When that track is full of enemies that you have defeated, you draw a Zord card that goes to the player associated with that color. And that can be used by the player once per turn. I'm not showing you what, because I think it's fun. I don't want to give you the spoiler. I wanted to find out what these Zords do. Know also, however, that also another way of getting a Zord is to defeat a monster, the ones that have 4 cards. And also you keep track of how many times you do that. The last card of the Zord deck, the one that always goes at the bottom, is the Dino Megazord. Again, you know, don't spot it for yourself. Find out in the middle of the battle what that does, because it's really fun. But those are clearly very important advantages. So this is the general idea. Move around, keep fighting, and try not to die, and don't lose until Rita loses. And if Rita loses, you win the game as a group, because this is a cooperative game. I think the game is really fun. It has a lot of interesting ideas. It is maybe more abstract than it looks like at first. I would almost say, I wouldn't say that the board is unnecessary, but at the heart of the game, this is a card game, because the position of your heroes within a certain space doesn't really matter. It's not a tactical game. You're not maneuvering around physically. The entire board could be this big with little tokens, and you wouldn't lose anything of the functionality. So as is, actually the game takes up quite a large amount of table space, but there is fun. Although mechanically it may be gratuitous, there is definitely fun in seeing these big hordes of monsters on the board, these nice colorful rangers that are represented in miniatures that are larger than traditional miniatures for wargaming or even for board gaming. They look a little more like toys than many other game pieces these days, and that's fine. There is that campy aspect, that tongue-in-cheek, childish element that I've seen in the few Power Rangers things that I've seen that seem to be prominent, and the fact that it looks like you're playing a game with toys rather than game components proper, that seem to be appropriate. The game is a card game with a lot of interesting decisions. The fact that everything revolves around your deck and management of hand management, discard pile management, deck management, that makes for really interesting gameplay to me, with a lot of interesting decisions. Yes, there is a randomness of dice, and somebody may get really annoyed by that, but frankly, if you play well, if you play strategically, if you're able to synergize the way the Rangers work with one another, then you're going to get more die rolls. You're going to get to roll more often with more dice, with some automatic hits here and there because of abilities, with rerolls. So if you optimize the way your Rangers roll, you're gonna have so many ways of improving your odds, that I think that luck is not something that throws weird stuff at you in this game exclusively, but something that you can work with or against. And part of the fun is precisely in increasing your chances. If then after you did your best, then Lady Luck is not looking at you favorably, then so be it. But in general, this is definitely an interesting game. I love, again, what you can do with the deck. In a certain sense, it reminded me of another game that I really much like recently, which is Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth, where you also have card-based combat, and based again on how you place your cards and how many cards you and which kind of cards you leave in the deck that you use to resolve combat. Here the deck is not used to attack the enemies but to defend. But again, so many interesting decisions about that when you choose what you place in the discard pile back into the deck. You're gonna put a lot of shields, that is not many cards, or meaning cards with a lot of shields, not many cards, but then you can get them back and use them to fight, or you only wanna fill up the deck with cards that will allow you to defend a lot. Just different options there. But really, this is a game where you have to work together. A Power Ranger by him or herself is not going to do much. But the fact that they can work thanks to each other's actions, I go there, you go there, another player goes there, and then the fourth Ranger triggers the battle, and then I go somewhere else and somebody else triggers that battle. The flexibility in the turn structure there, to me, also adds a lot to gameplay. I think it's gameplay that is compelling. I find it really, really solid. Now, also, I could see, however, how one of the problems may be that when a battle is occurring, say with 3 Rangers here and 2 Rangers are somewhere else, the battle may take a while to resolve, and that's fine because that is the heart of the game. The heart of the game is playing cards against the line of cards of the enemies. That's it. Because the other actions resolve in, well, in the time it takes me to describe them. I go to the center of the headquarter and I shuffle my deck and I get a power token. Done, and that's my turn. And then somebody else does, okay, I'm gonna recover, so I'm gonna get 3 cards on my discard pile and put them on top of my deck. It really takes pretty much as long to do as it took me to say it, but the battle is the heart of the game, with so many decisions, which card you attack, which effects you use, how Power Rangers support each other. That is great. That is the game. But if players are playing 2 battles in a certain area, because after a battle you attack again to be able to clear the area, then somebody else is maybe not participating for 15 minutes or so. To me, it might still be interesting because you want to see what your partners do, but there maybe right there's a chance for disengagement, for disengaging emotionally, psychologically from the design. I didn't have that problem, but I am a weirdo who plays solitaire games with 5 characters, which seems to be possible, at least to me, and I enjoyed it that way, so I never had that problem. Again, many cooperative games people enjoy precisely because of the solitaire option, which is definitely here, but is not for everybody to control 5 characters and actually really jump from character to character, using their abilities together, figuring out what's in everybody's deck, etc., etc., etc. But with the exception possibly of downtime between battles when you're not directly involved, I don't see any particular problem with the game. Maybe somebody could complain about the fact that it's just one horde after the other. The game may feel repetitive, but to me, fighting the same exact monsters with the same powers when I have a full deck, or I have a very thin deck and then I really want to, well, it becomes much more tense, well, to me, is not the same fight. The enemies may be the same, but as attrition is reducing my abilities to act, there is more tension, and from time to time, maybe you will accept that one of your Power Rangers will be defeated in the bigger scheme of things that is actually good for the team, as it allows you to recover, and then that rejuvenated Power Ranger can do a lot, etc., etc., etc. I like it. I like it from the challenge that the cards of the enemy give you, as you decide which one you want to attack, in what order, which one attacks, the powers of the Rangers, more than anything, what you can do with your own decks. These are all strong mechanics that I think have been implemented very well. Again, gameplay may not be for everybody because it doesn't scale very well, because possible downtime, because of possible repetitive feel, but to me the game was fun. What I could do was definitely interesting. I found that the gameplay gave me a lot to think about, a lot of interesting decisions, a lot of tense moments, and that is definitely what I want from a game. Especially from a cooperative game, I want the sense of impending doom, and I want a close confrontation. Even if I win, I want the confrontation to be very tense. I want to barely win, because if you win easily, what's the point? I know there are expansions out there, haven't tried them, but as for the basic game, I think it's a solid game. I don't know that the replay value will be super strong with the game, with the basic game only, just because of the fact that you don't have many villains, and so more or less the overarching structure will be the same from game to game. But as is, the game to me is a solid game with very interesting and fun gameplay.